And we are live. Hello, everyone. Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Rebel. Welcome to, I call it the Jeet Kune debate since I don't have a dialogue partner. Um, I don't know how many of you know this. I'd had an idea probably 3 years ago when we started the Jeet Kune dialogues to also have from time to time the Jeet Kune debates where I would moderate something between a couple of Jeet Kune Do guys. And to be honest, I have never been able to get anybody to agree to come on the show and and give opposing views or what have you. So um, maybe now that I've done this and given it a whole new name, maybe that will spark some interest and we can actually get. I mean, you guys know this. Every week on the different Jeet Kune Do pages on Facebook or wherever, there's ongoing discussions from opposing sides, let's call it. So I had a thought about um, formalizing that into the debate structure. Not that I know much about debates and what have you, but yeah. So maybe after this we'll get something happening. So as you're logging in, if you guys would be kind enough to say where you're logging in from, hit the like button. Feel free to continue doing so throughout the debate. Right. If you are catching the simulcast over on the YouTube, please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell as well. If you enjoy my work and you'd like to support the program, please visit jkdrebel.com, click on the Rebel Gear link, and that's where you'll see stuff like this. The four tenets of Jeet Kune Do t-shirt, long sleeve, short sleeve, sweatshirt, hoodie, and coffee mug. But of course, the best thing you can do is to share this video and spread the word about all my podcasts. The I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast, the Jeet Kune Do dialogues, the Jeet Kune Do debates, the new one, right? So I have to adjust my screen here. Give me a sec because since this is going to be interactive with whoever shows up, um, and I can only, okay, all right. Okay, so let's see who's here. Terry Valor, back in the number one position where he belongs. Tim Red Tiger, Jerry Winterfell, Norman Taylor, Kyle Atkins, JKD Mexico City. Kyle, I dare say this is the first time I've seen your name. Thanks for tuning in. Steve Juman is here from Tampa. John Nasir, hello, John. Simon Alpin. Norman says he'll come on as a practitioner. Right, Norman, but we have to have, but if you're talking about the dialogues, we can definitely talk about that, but we're talking about the debates, right? So, for example, like I tried to get Richard Torres to come on to debate me, but that's kind of not fair because I can't be moderator and a participant in the debate as well. But so that's never happened, and I've invited other people, but somehow hasn't worked yet, right? Bo Jackson's here from Tallahassee. Bob, oh man, I don't say Bob's name often enough, his last name to risk pronouncing it, but thanks for tuning in from Germany, Bob. Ed Stahl here, my fellow style hopper. Bucky Barreto, Dennis Lastly, that's a new name for us as well. All right. Okay. All right. So nobody's put a question in that. So I'll deal with some stuff that came in beforehand. So Robert LaSalle asked about his thing was about the power side forward thing, right? Saying that Bruce Lee had said that JKD fighters are usually strong hand. You know, it's interesting sometimes how people phrase their comments or even their questions or what have you, right? So if I remember correctly, Robert said if Bruce Lee said that JKD fighters are usually strong hand forward and are southpaw, and that this is a big advantage. I don't know that Bruce Lee said that. I don't know if Bruce Lee said that JKD fighters are usually southpaw. because then that means that JKD fighters are usually right-handed. Okay. Um, but I'll tell you this. Here's what I've been told. There were at least two JKD fighters that Dan Inosanto was told by Bruce Lee to forget the power side forward thing, right? And let them fight with their left side forward, Richard Bustillo and Daniel Lee. Why? Because those two guys had more boxing experience, more actual boxing experience than Bruce Lee ever did. Remember that Bruce Lee's ability in boxing was not through being trained in boxing by a boxer, but remember that Richard Bustillo and Daniel Lee were both authentic boxing champs. So, dare I say, there might not have been much that Bustillo or Daniel Lee would have learned or could have learned about boxing from Bruce Lee. So I've been told that Inosanto was told that don't worry about those two when it comes to boxing and changing to left lead or whatever. Now I'm sure that as Bruce Lee students, of course, they incorporated the right side forward and what have you, right? So I looked this up and I found out that there has been a movement, or there is a movement towards power side forward, as in, because what is it? 90% of the world is right-handed, okay, or something like that. But in boxing, it's still a very high percentage of people fighting orthodox, whereas in MMA, apparently there's a movement towards power side forward, like 40% of them or something, which would make sense because the MMA world would be more closely associated with the Jeet Kune world than with the boxing world, right? MMA fighters, because they are martial artists, not boxers, right, would have more interest in what Bruce Lee, a fellow martial artist, had to say, right? Which brings me to another point, because this one came up also. I think it was Richard Roland who brought up the thing again about Bruce Lee and being the father of MMA and what have you. And once again, simply put, the competitive aspects of MMA, the thing that drives MMA athletes and MMA fighters, right? The idea of not sticking to just one way, even if it's just two things they know to do. They know to do some Muay Thai and they know to do some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? Remember this. Years and years ago, Muay Thai people didn't cross-train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Years and years and years ago, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu people, to the best of my knowledge, didn't cross-train in Muay Thai. The UFC and MMA brought that idea of mixing the arts together. And so, like I said recently, since non-JKD people, their understanding of Bruce Lee and Jeet Kune is that Bruce Lee, for example, and you've heard me say this before, Joe Rogan famously said that Bruce Lee took the best techniques from different styles and he blended them together into what is Jeet Kune. So that kind of simplistic understanding of what Jeet Kune is would lead people in the MMA world to christen, right, or crown Bruce Lee as the father of MMA, because their idea is that he was one of the pioneers of mixing the arts. And then, of course, when we talk about that, then people have to point out that in Greece, right, pankration, they were mixing long before Bruce Lee. The founder of Bartitsu, I think, in England, he was mixing long before Bruce Lee. The Kajukembo people, somebody will always bring up Kajukembo because they were combining martial arts styles way before, right? And probably other people. Yeah, okay, but this is the thing, right? We have to remember, Bruce Lee is the only one out of all of those people that became like a worldwide phenomenon, a worldwide superstar. That's why his stuff is better known. But for anybody to claim, because all they know about is Bruce Lee, to claim that Bruce Lee is the first and Bruce Lee is the best and Bruce Lee is the only and what have you is ridiculous. If you don't know, you shouldn't say stuff like that, right? So so that was that. So Robert's whole thing was about the power side thing. Now, here's the other thing that I talked about just earlier today. Power side. I was talking with oh man, I always mess these up because they're I have two Facebook friends with the same last name who are not related, and it's not a common last name like Smith or Brown. It's Loudermilk, and it's Charles and Timothy Loudermilk, and apparently they're not related, right? So I always forget which one, but I think it was Timothy. He and I were talking, and he said that for him the whole power side thing is not a factor. He has not found it to be advantageous, and so he's pretty much balanced. If I remember correctly what he said, he's pretty much balanced. It doesn't matter whether he's left side or right side. I kind of agree with that because I remember in my early days we would do, and when Richard Torres hears this, he'll go, you see, right? I remember in my early days that there was a lot of left side forward kickboxing being done. But when it came to trap in hands, people would switch to right lead. And immediately, even without knowing what I was doing, to me, that didn't make any sense. And so I made it a point to work both. In other words, to work all four, work trapping and kickboxing from right lead, and then work trapping and kickboxing from left lead as well. I mean, God gave me two arms, right? So why don't I try to use them? And then there's also the discussion, and Timothy brought this up, when you say stronger side or power side forward, are you talking dexterity or are you talking strength? See, because, and Nico Cavallino is somebody who's talked about this, I think. I think Nico says he's left-footed but right-handed. And to a certain extent, so am I. My left leg is way more flexible than my right leg is. But because I'm a natural right-hander, my right leg is stronger than my left side. But I'll tell you this, having trained the Muay Thai switch kick for over 30 years, my left side became stronger. And in whatever version of this book you have, whether you have this new one, which is simply called Jeet Kune, or if you have the old one, which is commentaries on the martial way, Bruce Lee has a lot of stuff in there about left side development. So this idea that there shouldn't be, right, or that there's got to be dominant this and dominant that, I don't know, right? One thing I should point out, my friend and fellow Floridian JKD guy, Tim Motter, Tim said something interesting. Tim said that the whole, the right side forward thing, that for him at his school, it's the tactical advantage of being in right side when most other people are left side. And I think that's definitely something that we should we should consider, right? Another consideration is that boxing, MMA, all that stuff, that's competitive stuff. It's not self-defense, it's competitive stuff. So the idea of setting people up with the lead hand and taking them out with the rear hand is an age-old principle from the very start of pugilism and what have you. Self-defense is different. Self-defense, you want to get the job done as quickly as possible, as simply as possible, as directly as possible, right? And as non-classically as possible. So the propensity for hitting with the power side and making that immediate, because in self-defense, you're not looking to set people up, right, for your knockout shot or what have you. You want to get yourself out of that situation as quickly as possible. So that's a reason to put the lead arm forward, right? Okay, all right, so that's that. So, okay, now I know I'll get comments. So let me try to scroll through. Jerry says, okay, all right. Listen, let me just say this up front, right? Everybody knows I was granted 45 minutes, so don't get me in trouble, right? Don't let me go. Don't let me go too much past 7 o'clock if this happens, right? And if I miss anything during the live stream, later, well, not later today, tomorrow, I'll come back to the comments and I'll reply to anything, right? So, because I don't have a producer who does the scrolling for me, I'm scrolling for myself, right? So, Jerry says, add in different fighting strategy into one JKD toolkit. All right, so I don't see a question, Jerry, but as I don't know too much about Jeff Thompson, but I know that Tony Blauer is a big Bruce Lee fan, right? I know if you guys remember, Tony had a thing called Chu Fendo before the whole spear system and all that. So Tony has always been somebody. And if you've not seen, did I interview him twice in the dialogues? I feel like I did, but if not, he did at least one episode of the Jeet Kune dialogue. So you guys can look that up and hear him talk about that there, right? So adding different fighting strategies into one's JKD toolkit. I mean, efficiency. Didn't Bruce Lee say, Jerry, that efficiency is anything that scores? So if Tony Blauer, and isn't this interesting, right? So Tony can be influenced by Bruce Lee, and then he starts doing something. And if a JKD guy looks at it and goes, well, that's pretty efficient, that's pretty effective, but Bruce Lee didn't do it, so I can't use it. So I can't use something that was developed by somebody who was Bruce Lee influenced because Bruce Lee himself didn't do it, right? See, that's where I think some people start saying that there are people who idolize and worship Bruce Lee. And so there's this thing about, well, Bruce Lee didn't do it, so we're not going to be doing it. And that's nonsense, right? If Bruce Lee had lived, who knows what he might have ended up doing. So as far as I'm concerned, and then what did he say? What was the lesson cinematically in Way of the Dragon? If it can help you in a fight, then you should study it, right? And then he slaps the guy in the chest. Okay, all right. So that's that one, Jerry. Simon Alpin, why do some think JKD, as in the tools, tactics, and is outdated? I've asked but never got an answer back. Well, I don't know if you asked me specifically, Simon, but why do some people think the tools, the tactics, and the principles are outdated? I think I commented on this, Simon. But well, why would they think that? But probably because they go, well, Bruce Lee's stuff is from the 60s. It's 50 years old. So we should move forward. I don't know. I mean, unless you're talking about, well, let's see. Let me think about this for a second, Simon. Okay. To give credit to people who say something about something being outdated, here's one. They say that, for example, grappling in Jeet Kune was never fully developed, and by never being fully developed was never, to use the common parlance, pressure tested. So we needed to find a way to pressure test. So if they're talking about stuff like that the Jeet Kune grappling approach of not countering the grappling or just doing it only in cooperative drills or what have you, if it's something like that they're referring to, then yes. I remember a few months ago, Simon, maybe you remember this, I think it was Michael Perez that showed the response from the fighting method book. The guy attempts to tackle and Bruce Lee just rocks back and kicks him in the face, right? That was one. and then I think it was it was Richard Torres that showed um, against the headlock, right, hitting the guy in the groin or what have you, and that sparked a whole debate. It's possible that stuff like that could be outdated. The idea of rocking back and simply kicking somebody in the face when they drop down to tackle you could be outdated. Does that mean, however, that it's not viable? That if you have the timing and the speed and the spatial awareness that you can't pull that off? It's possible. However, and I think I saw when I was scrolling, I saw Zane Isaac's name here. Yeah, there we go. Right. So a guy today that shoots in to try to take you down has probably worked against somebody who tries to kick him in the face, right? And is probably ready to grab that leg. And now you find yourself in a second set of trouble. So it's all that. And I think, Simon, ultimately it all comes down to what have you tested? What have you worked with? What have you worked against? Right. But to just across the board condemn Jeet Kune as being outdated simply because it's from the 1960s, well, that's ridiculous, right? And then Jeet Kune principles are evergreen. Jeet Kune principles are not going to go out of style anytime soon, right? Okay, all right. So I got to keep an eye on the clock and move through this stuff. I hope you got something out of that, Simon. Okay, Norman Taylor says some boxers are ambidextrous. Yes, right. A high percentage answer to martial art. You're right. That's it, Bob. Wouldn't the Jeff Thompson stuff still be about? Yes. Yeah. So, like I said, I don't know that much about Jeff Thompson. But from what I've seen, it's JKD principles, or it's universal principles that Bruce Lee popularized over the past 60 years and brought to the attention of more people because of his superstardom. So did Bruce Lee invent interception? No, because it's an idea taken from fencing. So he didn't invent it, but I think in the world of martial arts, the concept of the stop hit has been popularized more by JKD people than by fencers, even though we may have borrowed it from them, right? MMA fighters have a grappling base, and yes, Bo Jackson, that's actually part of what I read. I saw it in a thing in Black Belt magazine. I think it was from I forget who the author was, right? But yeah, MMA fighters do have grappling base, and that's right lead. So yes, okay, all right. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, Steve Drummond says, I heard something about Jean LaBelle was also a pioneer with mixing the arts. Well, I've heard something like that too. Yes, it's like if Bruce Lee is the father of MMA, then Jean LaBelle is the grandfather of MMA, because I think LaBelle, LaBelle famously fought against Inoki in the grappling versus boxing thing. No, do I have that right? Or the wrestling versus judo or whatever, right? So anyhow, right? Yeah. So Jean LaBelle was a guy who kept his eyes open and looked around and what have you. So yeah, he would qualify as a pioneer, right? Okay. Trapping on right lead and kickboxing left lead. Norman, I'm not sure if you're saying you that happened to you too. Anthony Barreto, Bucky Barreto says, "What is choiceless awareness?" I don't know, man. I'm not real smart with them kind of words and what have you. So to me, choiceless awareness means immediate choice, unconscious choice, right? Having gone through so much, having put yourself through so much, that the choices that you make aren't even choices. It's like knowing exactly what to do, not having to choose what to do, right? So Bucky, what this reminds me of is people who said, "Oh, well, if you train French kickboxing, if you train Muay Thai, if you train Kali, if you train JKD, if you train Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and you get into a fight, you're not going to know what to do. You're not going to know how to respond." And that's probably true if when you train in all those things, you just train your imagination. You don't physically train anything, right? And that's probably true. I mean, come on, that was one of the most ridiculous things I said. But if you're talking about, oh yeah, I research by reading, so that's how I become informed about how to counter something from a wrestler, because I read about wrestling or I watched a wrestling video. I have watched wrestling videos and they scare the hell out of me because they're so fast and they're so dynamic, right? I'm like, if he gets his hands on me, I might be in a lot of trouble. So choiceless awareness, it's doing so much work, Bucky, that you can make the choice and yeah. All right. Okay, that's it. I'm gonna go there. Um, Simon, okay. Can man be set unconditionally free? No, Bucky, because if we live on the planet, there's always going to be some kind of condition. Okay. So if you're not going up to Coral Springs tomorrow, we can talk about this 11 o'clock tomorrow, Bucky. Right. As soon as you try to kick me out of there on our room. Gee, be quiet. Right. Okay. Michael Capiello, how old is boxing? To say Jeet Kune is outdated is nonsense. Right. Exactly. Exactly. Okay. Jerry Winterfell again. Could you explain how Tai Chi or elements being used in one's personal expression? Dan Lee used Tai Chi with his JKD. How that would be mixed in, since I'm not many using it in their expression besides Dan Lee and Paul Vunat. Curious to hear your opinion on this. Right. So um, I'm not sure. When you talk about Paul using Tai Chi in his JKD expression, I think Paul borrowed the concept of layug, the concept of sail, right, where you uproot people and push them off you. I think that was something that I've seen him do, and I'm pretty sure that he got that from Insano as well. So Dan Lee, I'll tell you, when I read that, Jerry, it reminded me of something. Dan Lee is from the era where you didn't talk about Jeet Kune, right? So Dan Lee's Jeet Kune was invisible, was hidden, so to speak, in his Tai Chi, if you understand what I'm saying, right? Um, so it's like that backyard mentality, right? JKD was this special thing that you kind of kept to yourself, right? And you only shared it with like the special people or what have you. So in terms of him, he'd be the best person to to explain it. But off the top of my head, the little bit that I know about Tai Chi being is it a Taoist art? But the whole yin yang principle, right? Tai Chi being so quintessentially Chinese, possibly being also philosophically quintessentially Chinese, that push and pull yin yang interplay of opposites or complementary halves of the whole thing that is so prominent in Tai Chi is something that Bruce Lee would have been definitely aware of, right? So I think that philosophically it would be built in. I could be dead wrong on this, but in terms of like technical aspects of Tai Chi and what have you, uh, Tai Chi, I've heard some people say Tai Chi, don't be mistaken into thinking that it is a slow motion meditative thing for old people in the park. That everything in Tai Chi is a fight and move, has a fight in application. So it's possible, I'm going to make this up, right? Just extrapolating. Dan Lee could have been aware of that stuff. And so by mixing it up with a young firebrand like Bruce Lee, um, he became even more interested in the combative applications of Tai Chi. I don't know. I only trained with Dan Lee a couple of times, and I never had any deep conversations with him or what have you. So if you ask me to answer, I think that there could be something to that, the combative application of Tai Chi, right? Not inspired, but not even influence. I don't know. I don't know, but definitely the philosophy. I mean, isn't the Jeet Kune symbol, the Jeet Kune logo, a Tai Chi logo? Right. Okay. Tim Red Tiger. Tim, I actually was gonna get to your thing. Wait, hold on a second. Let me open up my notes here. I have your original thing, Tim. How can Bruce Lee and Tim, Red Tiger, you got to stop using big words with me, man. I'm not smart enough to understand the way you write, right? How can Bruce Lee's reductionist attitude toward martial art be reconciled with his concurrent individualistic attitude towards martial art? Is the contradiction real or apparent? Well, there is no contradiction. There is no conflict, right? And now you're saying, is there a conflict between the JKD principle of simplicity and the principle of self-expression? How many times have you heard people say, I'm just a simple man? There is no contradiction. There is no conflict there at all. Being reductionist in your attitude, right, towards martial art, and being individualistic. Well, yeah, that was Bruce Lee's choice. Remember that Bruce Lee rebelled against the classicalism, against the idea in traditional martial arts of adding on, right? Remember, you start as a white belt and you know this stuff, and then you add on to get to your yellow belt, and then you add on to get to your green belt, and then you add on to get to your whatever next belt, and that's how it went, right? The whole accumulation thing. Bruce Lee rebelled against that. So in expressing himself, in being reductionist, right? I don't see a conflict at all. And I wouldn't be surprised if, Red Tiger, you were just testing me on that to see how my brain works, right? The other one. So let me tell you guys, because he didn't put. I'll tell you what the other thing that Tim said here. Yes, you were definitely testing me, Red Tiger, because here's what he said to me, folks. He goes, "What should be the role of non-practicing masters?" And I thought, is he saying that I'm old and fat, that I don't practice anymore, right? And then he says, for example, I'm kidding, right? And then he says, for example, if someone was granted a 30th degree black belt in Cyprinus Carpio, but has not practiced in 20 years, where do they fit in? And I'm thinking to myself, all right, Cyprinus Carpio. I'm like, first of all, I ain't never heard of a 30th degree black belt. And I ain't never heard of this art either. So I went to the Google, and apparently, right, that Cyprinus Carpio is common carp, right? And so I'm wondering if it was a play on carp, as in common crap. And if somebody was granted a 30th degree black belt in common crap, but has not practiced in 20 years. All right, so here's the thing, right? I am not a big fan of people who, when you meet them and they'll go, "Oh, what do you do?" See, active tense, right? What do you do? "Oh, I am a martial artist." Oh, and then they're like, "Oh, I used to take." See, right there, I'm done with you. If I'm in a severe mood, I'm done with you because you used to. I still do. So we ain't really got that much in common, right? So if I'm being severe in my attitude towards people, I write them off immediately, because why did you stop training in martial art? It's the same way I used to complain to people when they go, "Oh yeah, I used to play piano." I'm like, Jesus, Why would you ever give up, right? Being able to play piano. I mean, come on. To walk up to that instrument and sit down and then be all melodious and stuff, right? Nah, no, you don't give up stuff like that, right? So yeah, so I think Red Tiger was just messing with me. And here's his third idea: is there more than one martial art, right? Are all styles merely ossified personal arts, right? That is, styles are artifacts of masters who found what worked for them and mistakenly believed they had found a final art. So uh, the, the, here's the part that I'm not too sure about. If there's really anybody who thought that they had found the final art, and finding what worked for them. I don't know. Is there any record of the founder of Aikido saying this is it? This is the ultimate. Nobody will ever need anything besides Aikido. Did the founder of Judo say that? Did any of the Okinawan karate masters, right? Did everybody feel that way about their thing? I don't know about that. Now, is there one martial art? Yes, there's only one martial art, right? Um, what's the Bruce Lee quote? The art of hitting is the art of moving, or whatever, or right. But a governing principle like that, right? Look, in order to do anything to me, what do you got to do? You got to move to me, right? That's one martial art right there, right? In order to do anything against somebody, if you are defending yourself using Aikido, what do they got to do? They got to move towards you, right? If you're using Ishinryu karate, what do they got to do in order to attack you, for you to defend yourself? They got to move to you. So yeah, there's only one martial art, right? Now, as in Jeet Kune, the way that you might express Jeet Kune can differ. The way that you can express yourself in self-defense can differ, but it's all just one martial art. Now, that does not mean literally that there's only one martial art, all right? You have to have a bigger mind than that. And Red Tiger, I know you know what I am talking about. No, well, not just you, everybody else knows what I'm talking about, right? Okay, Simon goes again. Evolution in JKD should be a personal one. If you feel the need to grapple, then grapple, then you don't. If you already know, then you don't need to learn that the art of JKD does what it does. You do what you need to make yourself more complete. Yeah, well, yeah. Evolution in JKD can't be anything but personal evolution. And then, well, no, let me rephrase that. Born out of the personal evolution, right, can be methodology. If you think about it, go back to the founder. The Jeet Kune Do methodology came out of his personal evolution. So then he influences Taki Kimura, James Lee, Dan Inosanto, Ted Wong, Bob Bremer, Steve Golden, whoever else. So then all these people end up doing the same thing. See, because personal evolution is built in to the Jeet Kune Do methodology. So yeah, you do what it is that you need to do. You do. If you live in a place, let's mix something up. If you live in a place where there's no weapons whatsoever, people can only use hands and feet. Guess what? Right? You might never have to study weaponry as a martial artist, because it's not necessary for you. If you live in a place where everybody has a weapon, let's say you live in a place where everybody has a blade, you can't go and go, oh yeah, well, I'm just going to teach empty hands. I'm not going to teach weaponry. My JKD will just be, that's ridiculous, right? And I was going to say it's high time that people stop being so stubborn about Jeet Kune Do, but it's not high time. It'll never be. People will always be stubborn about Jeet Kune Do, right? There's always going to be the people who are like, Bruce didn't do it. Like they and Bruce Lee were best friends, right? Bruce didn't do it. So if Bruce didn't do it, it's not Jeet Kune Do. And so if you go off and you start studying all this other stuff, then you're not doing Jeet Kune Do and whatever, right? That'll always happen. So yes, Simon, you do whatever the hell it is you need to do, right? Okay. So G, you're jumping around both on the Facebook and and on the YouTube. Okay, all right. G's just messing with me. Terry agrees with Simon. Tai Chi with boxing. Ah, William Chen. Yeah, I know who that is. I'm old too. Not too. I'm sorry. I'm old, Norman. Right? Um, Steve loves the shirt. Hello. Yeah. This is one of my not too often seen shirts because this fits into my orange category, right? And orange days don't occur too often in on the calendar, right? So yeah, it's a great shirt. Do you know if Larry Hartzell's Scorch 1028? Do you know if Larry Hartzell's Jeet Kune grappling? So it's yes, Scorch. Talk to Tim Becker, Tim Bescherer. Just look him up on Facebook. In fact, let me just make a note. I'll do a link for you because I can't do a link right now. But yes, the Junfan Jeet Kune Grappling Association. Tim Becker is in charge of that, and or if anybody can pull up the Facebook link for Scorch and put it into the chat so he can see it. Otherwise, I'll send it to you when we're done, Scorch. Wait, hang on. 10:28. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, moving along. Old videos of Grandmaster Chen sparring with the very unorthodox. There you go, Russell. Okay. Lots of big words. That's Tim. That's Red Tiger's fault, Jerry. That's not me, right? What's the meaning of martial arts? Bucky, what can be absorbed from Thai boxing? So look this up, Bucky. Cass Magda being interviewed by Will Woma, I think, or Mick Tully, who knows, right? And he talks about his early experience with Muay Thai, right? So everybody gets kicked. Everybody's been kicked before until a Thai boxer kicks you in the leg. And then you go, holy crap, what the heck was that? So as soon as that happens, you're like, wait, so there's a way of kicking out there that can demolish you that I don't know too much about? Yeah. So that's the first thing that can be absorbed from Thai boxing. That kick to the leg, right? And then you don't want to absorb it no more. Then you start to investigate Muay Thai. And you find out that for the lungs, there's not much like it, right? Or at least in the old days, right? I'm sure, training methodology today, the way things have evolved. So I started Thai boxing in 1985 with Ajahn Chai. So I'm sure that conditioning methods have improved inside and outside of Muay Thai, probably commensurate with Muay Thai itself. So major thing that in the old days we got from Muay Thai was enhanced cardiovascular conditioning, power, the development of the knee and the elbow. Because again, we're not saying that Bruce Lee didn't have knees and elbows in JKD, okay? Right? But it might be another area that was not highly developed. So along comes Muay Thai and the opportunity to look into it. Also, the opportunity, because remember this, in the old, there was a time where in combat sports, when people clinched, right, the ref would come in and split them up. Doesn't happen, well, it still happens in some combat sports, but in a lot of them, now there's grappling being added to it. And so that tie-up position was not necessarily something that everybody was familiar with. So then being in a position where you could now start to throw knees and you could throw elbows and what have you, that gave people a different flavor, right? So that's something that can be absorbed, Bucky, right? Yeah, so right, exactly what Simon's saying here. Okay. Yeah, Steve says Adjon tried to kick me at one of Dwight's seminars. Yeah, I don't remember who I first got hit by. Probably Chai, probably Chai. But yeah, yeah, it was probably him. Anyhow, okay, all right. So is that it? I think that's it. And it's 6:45. You guys are so good to me. You're so good to me. All right, so I am going to, let's see if there was anything else that came up. Um, I wanted to make sure that I don't think he's here. I didn't see his name, but I want to make sure maybe Terry can pass it on to. I want to make sure that Mark Black doesn't doesn't think that I'm trying to fight with him or what have you, because some of you may have realized that one of the issues that I have with the modern JKD is this idea about preservation. Ed Stahl and I have gone back and forth on this. You preserve stuff that's old or dying or has died or what have you. That's what you preserve. You don't preserve things that are fresh and alive. There's no need to. JKD should be considered as fresh and alive and evergreen. And so there's no need to preserve anything in JKD. Now, so I think that comes out of the idea that what was the last thing? Base system. I think, yeah, I think that was the last thing that Mark and I discussed, right? That Jun Fan, there's this thing called Jun Fan that is the base system. And the evidence of it is that Dan Inosanto himself said that Jun Fan is the base system. So I'm gonna try to explain this to y'all again. Jeet Kune started out, well, Jeet Kune was never this big thing, right? There's pictures of Bruce Lee in Seattle with, I don't know, like 20, 30 students, right, in a room in the old days in Seattle. When you see pictures of the Oakland group, it was a little bit smaller. When you see pictures of the Los Angeles group, it was a little bit smaller. Quite possibly because the mentality was becoming a thing of small group, keep the numbers low and the quality high. And then Chinatown moves what? Into Inosanto's backyard, which is what, like 6, maybe 10 people? I don't know, right? Backyard mentality, the backyard training, the backyard mentality is a completely different thing. The small group mentality, right? Where, like Cass Magda says, you get the teacher's energy and you get the teacher's spirit, right? Cass talks about how there's stuff that you can say in that intimate group setting that if you say it to 100 people is going to take on a completely different meaning. So, you know how we talked on Wednesday about disagreeing? So there are things that my teacher, Dan Inosanto, has done and said that I won't use the word disagree. If it were me, I would have done it or said it differently. So saying something like Jun Fan is the base system. Now, I've been with him for almost 40 years. I have seminar experience, private lesson experience, driving in the car, just the two of us experience, hanging out at his house experience. And I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that I've been in different situations with him. So I know the difference between what's being said in seminar presentation versus what's being said when it's just a bunch of us. That you hear stories about class finishes and you go to the restaurant and then the restaurant people have to kick you out, and then you're in the car park and stuff, and the cops come by and all that. I've been through all of that, and I'm just telling you that so you understand where I'm coming from. I'm not trying to brag or anything, but Dan and Sano and I are best friends. We're like this, right? No. If you say in a small setting, well, Jun Fan is kind of like the base system. Everybody understands what you're saying. Because those people also know that on the day that Bruce Lee stopped using the term Jun Fan and started using the term Jeet Kune, nothing changed in terms of what they were physically training. So Jun Fan is Jeet Kune. It's just a different in name. Now, decades later, when you got to start explaining things and trying to make sense and trying to get everybody to a particular level of understanding, you could end up saying something like that. Well, no, see, before Jeet Kune Do, there was a thing called Jun Fan, right? Or before Jeet Kune Do, the art was called Jun Fan. So Jun Fan kind of set the base for the further exploration that is Jeet Kune Do. You see? But so this idea that there's a separate thing called Jun Fan that has to be preserved, and then there's this other thing called Jeet Kune Do, which brings me to the final point. This idea that Jeet Kune Do is to be kept separate, because if you're going to dilute Jeet Kune Do, you cannot dilute Jeet Kune Do, because Jeet Kune Do says, like Simon and I were just talking about, you got to do whatever the hell it is that you need to do, right, in order to handle your situations. So as a Jeet Kune Do instructor, that's what you have to provide for your students. You got to provide the experiences. You got to provide the knowledge and the ability for them to deal with whatever it is that they might have to deal with. Now, Bucky will remember this. Last night, V was saying, well, when are you going to teach me knife fighting? And I went into this whole long spiel about knife fighting is not for beginners, right? That happens to be my approach. It's just like energy drills. You really think that you should be teaching Chi Sao to somebody who's been around for 2 months? No, they can't even put one foot in front of the other yet, right? It's like this. It's like if you're teaching kids JKD, you really think that you are going to be able to teach kids the value of power side forward immediately? There's always going to be some little wonder kind, who can pull it off. But that's something that I noticed in the karate places, that there was more stability training kids, even though the karate people train everybody, all ages. There was more stability training kids from the rear, letting them develop the rear leg front kick, letting them develop the rear punch before you tried to teach them any of the important JKD principles. You got to be that flexible in what it is that you're doing. You got to be able to modify whatever it is to suit whoever it is that you're teaching, right? So this idea about Jun Fan is separate from Jeet Kune Do. And then if it's Jeet Kune Do, you have to keep Jeet Kune Do separate from your jiu-jitsu. You got to keep, no. Now, you might train it that way because you might set up your school where you have separate classes for everything. But at some point, right, the way they did it at the old Kali Academy, the old Kali Academy had what? The JKD class, which was an integrated class, which was also by invitation, which was probably also like private or closed door or whatever the heck it was in the early days, right? Because there has to be a time at which you bring all that stuff together. You might want to keep it separate. I mean, because nowadays people are interested in martial art workouts like jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai that will make them huff and puff and sweat and what have you. And so it makes sense to have these things separated. But as a JKD instructor, right, in a JKD centric establishment, there should definitely be, like how they have like black belt club, and the black belt club people get all this special stuff, and they pay more money for it, right? In a JKD centric establishment, that could be the upgrade program. You see, everybody understands that everything else is a feeder. Just like all the lower classes are feeders for what? Black belt club, right? I can't believe I'm using this terminology, right? Okay, I did what I'm talking to you about. I did it in my school, but we never called it black belt club because we were JKD centric. We were JKD first and foremost. So we never called it black belt club. And so it's a principle, right? So I'm taking a martial art business principle and converting and applying it to JKD. All right. So my time is up. Yes. Okay. All right. Just one more. Just one more. I got 5 minutes. The JKD seminar stuff is what caused a lot of confusion. Yes, Simon, I think you and I talked about this a couple of months ago. Yes, the seminar stuff did definitely cause a lot of confusion because a lot of what should have been explained or what should have been better explained was not, right? Okay, Kuya Ricky, Junfan Gung Fu versus Junfan Kickboxing. When, where, and why did these terms come about? So the when, where, and why. Ricky, I can't say for sure, but I can tell you that as somebody who was on the receiving end of terminology like this is what it meant for me. Junfan kickboxing is kicking and punching, the kicking and punching methods as devised, designed, trained, and taught by Bruce Lee. All right, there's a towards the end of the Tao of Jeet Kune, Bruce Lee talks about shadow kickboxing, right? So there was a kickboxing phase in Jeet Kune. So since Jeet Kune is not kickboxing, you can refer to that as the Bruce Lee method of kickboxing. So Junfan kickboxing. When Bruce Lee adapted stuff from Wing Chun into with other Kung Fu styles and what have you, that became the Bruce Lee method of Chinese martial art. So you know how we get in trouble for the kicking, punching, trapping, grappling? Trapping and grappling, and again, this is a Dwight Woods breakdown. Trapping and grappling, because they require the skillful manipulation of your opponent's center of gravity. Trapping and grappling are inherently more sophisticated than percussive or impactful kicking and punching. So you start people with kicking and punching, because through dynamic kicking and punching, dynamic movement, people will acquire impeccable control over their own center of gravity. So when you have impeccable control over your own center of gravity, when you know where you are in space and time, right, and you crash with somebody, you can now start to feel where they're at. So that's where trapping and grappling comes in. So Junfan kickboxing becomes the base system. You see what I did there? Right? The upgrade from Junfan kickboxing is Junfan Kung Fu, right? Junfan Kung Fu or whatever. And then these two are carrier systems for the eventual blossoming of Jeet Kune, right? I'm being somewhat ridiculous and flowery and what have you in the language. But again, I would say that these were, again, attempts to not rewrite history, but to place things into a proper chronological context, perhaps. And so they were terms that were invented to, even though the Junfan method was a thing, not that was a Bruce Lee thing, right? So you could say that I've even seen something, the Junfan method of boxing, I think, right, that Bruce Lee had. So the Junfan method of Wing Chun, the Junfan method of kickboxing, the Junfan method or whatever, right? It's not a rewriting of history to use these terms if you're going to explain what the heck it is that you're doing or what the heck it is that you're saying, right? So Ricky, I don't know if that was if you got anything out of that, but that's what I would say if anybody asked me, right? Simon says the JKD sets and series took over. Well, the sets and series are good, Simon, for seminar, but they shouldn't take over in your school, right? Tool development and application is what should take over, right? Barreto, just as valuable in-house and in-car for an art like JKD. Okay, all right. Okay. Fear of entrepreneurship. Again, Bucky, we can talk some more tomorrow, right? Simon says, for me, once I started learning grappling arts, it opened up my view on trapping. Yeah, right? Okay, all right. It's 7 o'clock. I'm not gonna push the envelope and end up pushing anybody's buttons and what have you. So I am going to cut this off right now. If you guys, okay, so here's what I do need from you guys, right? This is self-serving. If you enjoy these debates or what have you, put a comment in, right? And maybe we'll do this once a month, okay? And yeah, so just let me know, yes or no. Do you think this is something that we should do once a month? Because then that actually makes my life a lot easier, because I don't have to prepare anything. I just come and hang out with my people, you know, and just run my mouth, as we would say in the islands, right? Okay, anyhow, so that's it for Jeet Kune debates episode 2, right? Again, please comment, let me know for sure, because you know sometimes like people are typing all the time on Facebook, and you ask them to do something, and then they never respond to it, right? But right. So I don't, if I don't get enough people saying, if I don't get 90% of the names that showed up here today, if I don't get 90% of those people saying something like, yes, we should do this once a month, I'm done with you, right? Okay, I gotta go, right? Thanks for hanging out, guys. Remember tomorrow, Jeet Kune Dialogues episode 246 with Ricard Ankerson out of JKD, Sweden, and it's at 3 p.m. Miami time, which is 8 p.m. UK time, 12 noon for the West Coast for G and Russell, and I think everybody else is East Coast with me, ain't you? Right? Okay, all right. So you guys have a great weekend. If I don't see you tomorrow, right? Otherwise, we'll talk soon. Take care.